Is your company ready for a digital transformation? Your IT might be roaring to go, but maybe the rest of your company's not. Today, we sit down with Josh from Tanduo to figure out how we get buy-in and take that next step.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome back to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
I'm Josh.
Josh, I'm excited to talk to you today, and I'd love to just know, what is Tanduo, and what's your role there?
So Tanduo is an IT consulting company. We really focus on helping organizations scale. So we have fractional leadership in the CIO space and then down into our delivery teams. Our main focus is going into mid-sized companies or larger and helping them scale their organization 2, 3, 4, 5x. So a company who's got 40 million of revenue and they're trying to get to 100, perfect sweet spot for us because they need to care about people, process, and technology, and that's where we play best.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of companies looking for that growth. Kind of how'd you get into this space? You yourself with Tanduo.
Yep. So I've spent most of my career in IT leadership. Worked at many large organizations and also had a small stint as a consultant. Got a chance to see a lot of small companies, work on a lot of innovation projects, but also then work for many large organizations where we did a lot of big digital transformation projects. Through all that work, one of the main things we found was it was really easy to find staff and get developers, get architects, get people to help you do the work, but it was really, really hard to find leaders who could go take a big, hard project and deliver that project. So when we identified that as a gap, that was kind of the starting point of Tanduo, and that's where we got into this scaling spot where we're fractional CIOs, we're helping on that digital transformation journey, and then we have a team that can come in and kind of be that first person that works on that hard project, and then we tend to fill it in with other staff as well.
Yeah.
So we're just that first FTE.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge need. Full transparency, as an MSP, we get people that are like, oh, you do digital transformation. We're like, no, not really. But, we can help with that. So it's great to have you in that space because you see the need there all the time, at least when we're doing discovery. But one of the things, kind of just reading on Tanduo's website and what you guys talk about is essentially being, stuck looking at their feet, companies are, instead of having kind of the strategic mindset. So I'm curious, what does that exactly mean? And how do you get a company to stop just looking at their feet and start thinking differently?
Great question. I think the biggest focus is operational, that looking at your feet, you're dealing with reactive issues, you're constantly trying to make sure things go well, and you're spending most of your time focusing on getting the current work done instead of how do I make the next 10 things we do better, and how do I make repeatability where we can do 100 things and so when someone's really looking at their feet, a lot of it starts with stabilization and really thinking about, okay, why are you stuck? Why are you so operationally focused? What's causing you to be reactive? Assessing that and then starting to build a plan to buy an hour of time, buy a half hour of time so you can start looking up a little bit more. And then that little bit of time you have, you can start looking pretty far out. And then a lot of times that can start to identify more tactical things you can do better, which then buys you more time, and you start gaining this momentum where you're spending more of your time focused forward and you're spending more of your time building repeatable processes instead of being reactive.
Why do you think, I'm just kind of curious, why do you think maybe some leaders or organizations kind of being stuck in that cycle for such a long period of time? Is it just what they're most comfortable in? Is it a safe place? What do you think?
I think it's comfort in getting stuff done. So it's really easy to be sucked into the tangibleness of, I got this many things done today. If you're going to look ahead, that's a delayed gratification situation where I have to now invest time today and maybe next week and many more weeks to then get something 6 months from now. So that judgment call is really hard, especially when if I look at my day and I see I'm going to work 10 hours today, but I have 15 hours of work, how do I prioritize a half hour to look ahead?
Yeah.
So that internal battle for each individual, especially when you're higher up in a company, in a mid-sized company too, you're often asked to do many things. And it's hard to say no. And the best advice I could give anybody is pause, prioritize your list, and say, what do you really need to do? What could you delegate? Because you could probably buy yourself 15 or 30 minutes.
Yeah. No, I like this. I feel like in the past, even to the point of, in my own experience, like some people that have looked ahead have kind of drilled out this time, but it's like not during the workday. They're like, oh, you know what? I'll look. Like they just grind it out to the point where they're like, you know what? I'll be done with the workday, but this last half an hour, I will focus on that project that needs to be done later. But it's just not sustainable, and it's more on an individual basis rather than like an organizational mindset.
And unfortunately, people like that get burned out really fast, and they're missing this opportunity to work with people. And when you work with people, it's easier to delegate to them. So if somebody is constantly putting work on themselves and working alone often, they will find it's hard to delegate work because they're not working with people. And it's just a vicious cycle where you just feel like you're piling up. And every new opportunity feels like you're just getting more and more work versus if you're always looking at your work and saying, okay, I have to do some sales improvements this week. Let me bring somebody else along with me. Because if I get stuck, that person can keep going while I'm stuck. And maybe they can't do what I can do. But if I only have 1 hour and they have 3, they can probably get that work done. So this idea of working with people can really help somebody who's stuck in this mindset where they just have too much work because they're not bringing people along enough to help them.
That's such great advice. I don't even think I've heard of that before, really. I mean, you hear about delegating, but bringing someone along and the opportunity for someone else to succeed as well, I think is another really bright the point of that is, hey, I'm going to bring this person along, and they're also going to be invested in this thing. So,
and they'll try to steal it from you a lot of times too. If somebody's there and they see that you don't have time to do it, but they see the value in it, and if they prioritize their work, they might find that in their work, this is the highest priority thing. In your work, it's the lowest. So it makes more sense that they take it, but that you didn't know that until you were doing work with people. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, it's like you're almost putting the idea in their head, like for that buy-in, which is, like all those leaders, they always say, oh, make it their idea. But it's always like, okay, so then you're leading them and leading them and leading them. Like that's a totally different way to get buy-in from someone else.
Especially in that model, if you're leading someone to it, it's still accidentally authoritarian. I'm still saying Brandon should go do this work, so I'm going to trick Brandon into going and finding that cheese in that corner, right? Versus let's go walk around the building, and we happen to see cheese, and Brandon goes, "I love cheese," right? Like that works so much better.
Sure.
And then you also increase the odds that something unintentional happens. Like we find we can work on this other thing together, and we find that we can work on this other thing together. Because as a leader, if I'm only ever steering people to where I think they should be, everything will go how I expect. And then you fast forward a few years later, and I'm saying my team doesn't lead up to me, my team doesn't help me, my team is not taking ownership in things. But that's because you're telling them everything to do. You're not creating an environment where they want to go do all those extra things because you're probably filling up their plate already by telling them what to do.
Yeah. All right, so let's kind of. I'm curious about this. I feel like we could talk about the leadership stuff for a long time. I want to get at some other stuff. Yeah. What's an opportunity-ready organization?
So an opportunity-ready organization is one who has really almost thought about a lot of what we just talked about. So as an organization, it can have all the same characteristics that we just discussed. An organization can be so busy that a brand new job or a new customer seems like a burden because we have not set up our organization in a way where we actually can say, yay, we got new clients, right? We got new customers. That takes intentional work from people to make it repeatable and say, yes, here's how we onboard clients. Here's how we support them. Here's how we get the work done with them. Here's how we make sure they get what they signed up for. All those things are intentional processes you have to put effort into, and you have to prioritize how you improve those and make sure that you're actually building that momentum. Because if you do, and you have some free time and have invested in making it more repeatable, you should be able to say, we can get 3 new clients, and now we can take 5 new, and then we can take 10 new. Versus a organization that is not opportunity ready is one that's doing a lot of great things probably. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears going into doing those great things. But oftentimes more work and more opportunities actually feels like a punishment.
Yeah, it's such a different way of thinking about it and getting set up. And you've had a lot of experience with enterprise companies down to mid-market. So I'm kind of curious, what's that look like getting a company ready or transforming them or opportunity ready when it comes to, let's say, a mid-sized company versus an enterprise level company? What's the difference between that?
So So I'll start with enterprise. That's where I have the most experience even. So an enterprise organization, oftentimes it's about money and focus because they're doing many, many things. So why does this thing deserve money and focus? So you're often selling the idea, trying to tie it into their long-term strategy. And in many large organizations, there's enough strategies out there that you can say, yep, this thing's going to tie, getting better at this and being more opportunity ready is worthwhile, so we can spend more money next year and more money the year after. At a mid-sized company, I think where I've found is it almost comes down to belief more often, where you've gotten to a certain size, let's say a $40 million company, you got into that size because you did a lot of things right, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that was put in. But in that organization, they don't have giant budgets they can throw at problems. They don't have the ability to go do 10 big strategic initiatives. They might be able to do one or two. So that choice is so much more important, and the risk of picking wrong is so much harder too, because you don't have the money and resources and focus to split. So in that case, it's a lot more about belief and then helping that prioritization process of, is this the most important opportunity we have as a company, or should we wait a year, try to grow from 40 to 45, and then when we're at 45, now we've built this foundation and we can take it further.
How many small or medium companies just think that's like normal growing pain and like don't know another way of doing it? Because I would assume they're just like, well, this is what we got to do to pay our dues and like to kind of break through the wall and eventually it'll end, not knowing that it will never end if they don't make an adjustment or a change.
Yep, and you got to invest in more than just people. I think a lot of the organizations, even for us, we're at 20 people now. We've gotten here a lot because we've invested in a lot of people. We have processes that help people, but a lot of our work has been in people. As we're growing, we have to focus on what are the processes that people are going to follow so we can go from 20 to 40. What is the technology we need that's going to help us go from 40 to 100, right? You need those things to scale. So again, as those companies are into the tens of millions, 50 into 100, you've invested a lot in people. Now it's time to start thinking about that process and that repeatable technology that elevates the process.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall in some of these conversations with, C-suite members or whoever it is as you're kind of trying to get that buy-in. Because I think, like people work harder and, you pat yourself on the back for it and stuff. But to see like the light at the end of the tunnel in a way through the people, process, and technology, it has to be like kind of a relief for some of these individuals. So
I think it's a relief, and one of the other really interesting aspects of it is if you look at your company over a multi-quarter perspective, if you spend 1 minute in sales today, is that same minute going to be more productive 6 months from now? Because ideally you've invested in some process and technology that helps it be more productive. And if you want to scale a lot, that needs to be a lot more productive because you need to train people and scale and get more, hire people and whatnot. So this whole idea of we're not trying to do this today because today is going to be better. We're trying to make sure that we can do more 6 months from now, and we can do more 6 months from then.
Yeah, as a team that has doubled in the last 6 months, and revenue continually growing, all the things that you're talking about, like I'm hearing it, I'm like, wow, this is I kind of think we have a lot of experience and great things as we've grown companies, but these are all things that it seems like really important for companies to kind of revisit as they continue to evolve. So with that being said, you guys kind of have this process which is stabilize, transform, and scale. I'm sure a lot of companies just want to move right to scale. So how do you kind of use that process and lead companies and consult them through it?
I think a lot of it starts with teaching. From a scale perspective, it's decently easy to go talk to somebody and really ask them a lot of questions around, do you have something that's scalable? How repeatable is it? Have you proven that to yourself? You don't have to prove it to me. Have you proven it to yourself? So that one's easier to talk people out of. I think the transform is tough because a lot of times people are trying to transform as well when they haven't stabilized something, and you're trying to change something while it's just burning.
Yeah.
Instead of just like get all the noise out of the way. Let's have a clear picture of what's going on. What's a problem? What's not? Then let's talk about our future. What does that look like? How do we paint that broader picture? And then we can start transforming into it, build that repeatability, and then get into that scaling.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we both work in IT, different areas. And a lot of times companies just see IT as like a necessary evil. I will
Very
say,
much
yeah,
so, yes.
yeah. They're like, this is the thing we need to do. And in a sense, I mean, I don't like this sales pitch, but sometimes people will talk about cybersecurity because we do a lot in cybersecurity as like, this is just an insurance policy. It's what if something were to happen and I need to do it, and fully understand it might not make you as increase your efficiency, putting software on endpoints and stuff that you don't see all the time, even though a lot of stuff's going on in the background. But people see it as a cost center, IT in general. How do you get the people that maybe have never invested a whole lot in IT or really heard about some of the things that you're talking about to not see IT as a cost center, but rather as kind of what you're describing and what you do at Tanduo?
I think it starts with teaching, and in many ways we're having to talk through how does your current day work already? Because technology is enabling your day. Technology is already enabling your organization. So a lot of times we ground it with that. Let's talk through what is technology already doing. It's already enabling a lot of what you do and the value you provide, how you make money and how you save money. And then try to walk them through, okay, you made those decisions over the last 5 or 10 years. You didn't know it was going to help you on all the things you just described. So if we see all these pieces of value that we didn't intend to have, but we know we built this foundation that was going to help us, that's really what we're doing going forward as well. We're trying to invest in technology that enables more choices, more technology, more business changes, business processes, so we can take on that market opportunity that comes up. So it's teaching there, and then I think the other really big aspect is understanding who each person is. So a lot of the C-suites that I've gotten a chance to interact with have been sometimes balanced and sometimes unbalanced, where we have a lot of people who think about just financials, or we have a lot of people who think about just technology, or. Really trying to emphasize the balance in that C-suite of leaders and helping them highlight, hey, you have the right people to have the conversation here. You just might need to let someone's voice be a little louder because they're maybe seeing it the right way. They don't have the right words. They're not used to teaching it this way, but they see how technology is helping grow that business. So elevating that person's voice a lot of times can really be a big difference as well.
It sounds like you got to get pretty deep into the business and learn about the influencers that are kind of in there. And, this probably isn't done in a bubble, I would assume, like just with your team. It's a lot of collaboration.
A lot of collaboration. And I think a lot of it's, a lot of people think technology is about technology. It is about people first. It's about relationships. You got to go in and understand who the people are that are making the decisions. Those are the people who are changing the processes and selecting technology and choosing to spend on it. If you understand their needs and the organization's goals, you can now start to have a little bit better picture of what are the processes that need to exist in the future for us to be successful. For example, if a company really wants to scale, they're probably going to invest in sales and marketing first.
Yep.
And in just double their sales team, for example. Do you have the processes ready for that? Let's go talk through. Maybe you need to go find a vendor that can help you in that CRM. Maybe you have Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever. But let's go find somebody who can help you scale it and go from a 5-person team to 10 or 10 to 20. So you're not just using your old processes. Otherwise, you're a 20-person team that's using the same process as a 10-person team is going to go slower. You're going to get the equivalent of 17 people instead of 20.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Especially the people that are like, it's just the tool. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, we had Salesforce. Nobody updates the CRM. It must be a problem with the CRM.
Must be a problem with the tool.
Yeah. Let's go to HubSpot. And it's like, oh, CRM's still not updated, or, inbounds aren't coming in, whatever that is. That's a really great point. So are there certain personalities that you think are, like, who's an ideal customer? And I know you talked about size and stuff, but more so from a personality standpoint, where you walk into a room for the first time and you're like, here's what we're doing, here's what we're trying to do, and you just like, this person gets it. Like, what kind of attributes do they have?
I think it's been really fascinating journey actually at Tanduo on that one, because one of the criteria we we recruit for is growth potential and growth desire. And that's exactly what we have to, if we find that in any of our potential customers or like a CIO or CFO, just a perfect sweet spot, because I'll start with growth desire. They have that growth desire. They see how they can grow. They have already started talking to some of their peers. They're already starting to try to teach how technology can impact their business. They already have a little bit of the groundwork laid. And then that growth potential is there because the company actually has market opportunities. I've run across a couple people who have growth desire and don't have growth opportunities where, sure, we can go do all these things, but is it going to increase your revenue? Are you going to make more money on this? Are you going to save money? Or is it just going to be a bunch of cool stuff we do? And then vice versa, I've come across a couple people who have a lot of growth potential. Customers are just being handed to them, but they don't have that growth desire yet. They're stuck and almost feeling like back to my example before, they feel like the customers are almost a pain and it's happening to them versus something that's an opportunity.
Yeah, I can't reconcile my brain to have that like mindset. I don't know why, but you wonder sometimes. You're like, how did this company like just plateau at 15 million or something like that? And is a desire? It's like, I'm comfortable. You know what I mean? Which is interesting.
Comfortable and busy. I think it's back to I've had the chance to work with just hundreds and hundreds of people. And I've worked with many people, unfortunately, who I don't think wanted to get there.
Yeah.
But they got busy for 10 years. And it wasn't they got busy for 6 months. I think if it was 6 months, it wouldn't have caused them to get complacent.
Yeah.
But if you had 10 years of you have 15 hours of work and you had 10 hours that you were willing to put in every day, after 5-10 years of that, you're just wore out.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean you don't actually have some of that growth desire or that growth potential. You're just so tired of almost the running on the hamster wheel. That desire is almost it's like a fire that's barely been fed, and it's very weak because you've just been burning it so hard for 10 years. So my personal belief is almost everybody has that somewhere. They just might have had an environment that almost like dimmed that fire for them, if that makes sense.
It does. I feel like you're describing what it was like for me to have my first kid, and I still have a desire to get on the treadmill, but I'm just so tired at the end of the day that I'm like, that's exactly right. That's kind of what it was going through my head a little bit, like just so burnt out. I want to, but I'm not gonna.
It's like easier to just cuddle with a kid and fall asleep on the couch.
Eat some ice cream and call it a day. So, all right. Well, I mean, if you haven't checked out Tanduo's website, go do it, because you have your own kind of language, I feel like, that you guys have created, and then you're consistent with it. So would you mind just kind of describing what a repeatable delivery machine is? Yeah,
would love to. So if you think about a lot of what we talked about, we're talking about processes that are repeatable. We're talking about technology that elevates that process, that often is automating that. That is creating a repeatable process, right? From a repeatable machine, it's almost this elevated version of you're creating systems in your organization where I can trust our systems and processes. So a good example of a repeatable machine, how do we approve a project that's over $1 million? A lot of companies don't even have a process for that or don't have any consistency. So every time it comes up, politics have to be played to go have a conversation and say, yes, let's go do this big strategic thing. That might just be a quarterly meeting. That might just be a monthly meeting that somebody has to start up and say, hey, we're here just to look at opportunities in the market, and we're here to discuss if we should take advantage of any of them. It's maybe 15 or 30 minutes. You sit down and talk about opportunities, and most of the time you say no. But that one time where you need to have a fast decision to say, let's go attack this opportunity, you have that systematic thing in place. That's one example more on the leadership side. And then when it comes to, I'll say more the IT delivery side, I have an architecture that lets me be confident that if a new market opportunity comes, we either need to buy and implement a new tool, or we need to build this custom application, or we acquired another company, we need to absorb them. The leaders are going to sit together and say, we know we have all the systems in place, that this is just work. This is just work, because we have that delivery machine that we can trust on how we plan, prioritize, and deliver on work.
Everything you describe seems like the best place to go work ever. It really does, because you think of these things and you're like, okay, we're going to land this new client that's in a vertical that we haven't been in before, and we don't know what's going, like, it's just planning for the plan, like what's going to happen in the future, and really preparing. It seems
preparing and knowing that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The goal is to have those uncertain things be placed on our plate and be given to us. And too often leaders and companies are building themselves to a spot where we're going to get 50 more clients that look just like this, which if that happens, that's great. You could probably knock that out of the park. But knowing that you also can handle these other fringe cases and be confident in them can be a really big game changer in the confidence of that leadership team and the faith and belief they have in everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So, it sounds like it'd be demoralizing as like starting this journey and not actually finishing it, right? Like you get this buy-in, and you guys, kind of talk about persistence when others quit. So at Tanduo, have you guys had an experience where, it's been really beneficial for that customer? You guys kind of stuck with it, even if it's been like a truly arduous process?
A handful of examples. I think probably the best case one was with Priority Inc. Things never got that bad, but we bought into being part of their leadership journey. We were there for if there's politics, we're there for politics. If there's hard conversations, we're there for hard conversations. But we were bought into the people and the success of that company. And that really helped us be invested in each other. And the cool part is they showed that equal investment back in Tanduo as well. And then probably other like microscopic examples are all these little hard conversations. So as a consulting company, it would be really easy to go, ooh, if I have this hard conversation with Brandon, what if Brandon fires me tomorrow? And at Tanduo, that is always you have to go have that hard conversation. It doesn't matter. If Brandon does get rid of us because we were trying to say a hard truth, that probably means we shouldn't work with that client anyway. Yeah. Because they're not willing to grow if they're not willing to hear feedback. And then if Brandon embraces that, that's a better relationship. We just went through a hard conversation. There's more trust built both directions. And we are probably going to have an easier time giving hard feedback to Brandon next time. And I bet Brandon's going to give us feedback next time. So that's just win-wins, right? But oftentimes as a consulting company, that first view of like, ooh, I don't want to push my client too hard because what if?
Yeah.
And we've done a really good job. That is always a yes. That's always you give feedback, you give hard feedback. We're only here for success. So if we're going to not share feedback, that means we're not going to be successful. So then what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would we even take anyone's money? We should just stop the project now. Which means we better go have that hard conversation.
Yeah. I like that you're not afraid to inject tension into something. Because, I mean, you look at teams or different places, like trust is built through conflict a lot of the time. And not even that as conflict. It's just, it's difficult for some people to have that conversation. So to say, nope, we're going to do it every time. And to have probably your employees have comfort in knowing that we're going to do it every time, like there's not an option, probably is like beneficial for them too.
Not an option, and we have their back too. So we have a whole mentorship model where somebody can spend a half hour, multiple hours if they need to prep for that conversation. If they need help, we're there to help you understand how to go have that conversation. It's probably not going to go that smooth if you haven't had that before, but that's okay. If it's your conversation to have, we're going to help you have that conversation versus somebody else swooping in and having it for you.
So, it sounds like you get Tanduo to come in and you do this digital transformation. Your life gets harder, maybe temporarily, but easier down the road. Who knows? I don't want to say harder, but you know what I mean? You got to make change. There's always hard points. If someone's an individual contributor or maybe director of IT, something like that, and they're listening to this and they're going, this is something that we need. Like, we're staring at our feet, but they don't maybe have they don't control the purse strings, or they're not a huge influencer. What's something that they can do to start putting this on the radar for their C-suite so next steps can be taken and they can move the needle a little bit?
I think probably that person's probably already tried some things before and started some conversations. So if they haven't, I would say go start having conversations, talk to peers, and the way I like to frame that is, go discuss shared problems. So too often, especially individual contributors, because they haven't sat in as many leadership seats, they don't realize that they're just trying to throw solutions at everything. So a good example is we need to go buy this tool. There's a lot of companies that have people that say that. We need to buy this tool. What are we solving? Why would we buy this tool? No one's going to say yes to that if you just say we need to buy this tool. But if that person instead goes and talks to peers and says, hey, it's really hard for all of our salespeople to stay aligned on this, on what we're doing for certain clients because we have 5 people working with one client. Or we have these people on this manufacturing floor who are just not aligned. We don't know where certain equipment is in the building, right? That's a shared problem you can describe and then say, hey, we need a tool. I have some ideas about tools that could maybe solve this. You're going to be heard way more. And then, so create shared problems, bring people together, go work with people. And then on top of that, it's go get outside help too. So sometimes I think people feel really alone at a company and they feel like, oh, I'm the only person, especially individual contributors. I'm the only person who's dealing with this. Every other company is great. I look at online and everyone's talking about all these great companies, yada, yada, right? But most companies are dealing with all the same problems. I guarantee you have tons of peers out in the market somewhere that you could talk to. You could reach out on LinkedIn. You could reach out through different groups you're part of. Ask your boss. Your boss might know other people. There's some way you can go find some people to talk to, and they will probably help you calm down and go, oh, my problems are similar to other people, and we can go solve this problem. And that person could almost act as an outside mentor for you too and help you work with your leaders.
Love that advice. I am curious, somebody maybe a little bit above an individual contributor, they might think that their responsibility is this transformation. Like they should be leading it. How do you get over that bump of asking, like bringing in someone like yourself? We get that with directors of IT for just the cybersecurity aspect. We're like, hey, we can help you with this. And they're like, you're trying to take my job. It's like, no, really, we don't want your job, But yeah, how do you get, I guess, over that? It's the same. I don't want to say it's the same, but
it's similar, just a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the toughest part there is if you want to be the one who gets all the accolades, is the person who gets all the credit, and everyone sees that you did all the work, you should not try to get help and go do it yourself. It's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah.
And oftentimes your company is not asking you to do that. Your company is asking you to achieve an outcome. Mm-hmm. They do not care if you do it alone or if you get help. So I think really recognizing that, are you just trying to do this because you want the credit and you're trying to have that external credit, or are you actually trying to achieve outcomes? If you're trying to achieve outcomes, it should be pretty easy to walk yourself back into, okay, what help do I need? And then find help who is not going to go take credit from you, but they're going to go work with you.
Yeah.
Again, I think there's a lot of consulting companies who will either come advise you and they want to get into the C-suite and then more or less do your job for you. Mm-hmm. And there's other companies that'll provide a bunch of staff and help for you. And I think the reason we started Tanduo is we're trying to be right in that middle. We're trying to go join that person. And if we're trying to first elevate you as that director of IT to go have that conversation. But if you need us to come with you, bring us along. Our goal is to be the helper. Our goal is to be the guide next to you, not be the one who's saying all the things. But we might have, very similar to how we do our internal people, we probably prep for 2 hours so that director can have a great conversation. That's our role. That's the sweet spot we're trying to fill into, is elevating people and growing great leaders.
Yeah. So talking about growing great leaders, last question before we wrap up here. Tech Ignite, the mentorship program. Can you tell me a little bit about how Tanduo is involved in that, and I guess why?
So Tech Ignite is our brand where we're really trying to elevate all, I guess, people in STEM. So it's high school, college, and then also professionals. What we're really trying to build out is this community of people who are helping each other, building those networks. So I actually know somebody outside my company, I can get mentorship. And that's what Tech Ignite is about, is that community. And the reason is people are all that matters. People are the ones who improve your process. People are the ones who implement your technology and make all those decisions, all the way up to leaders. Everybody needs a peer group. So the whole idea, inception of that was building this community and creating a conversation. And the last thing I'll say on it is, if you look at other cities, areas, or regions, one of the reasons that a lot of the coasts actually have really, really good, I'll say, technical companies, is because companies go talk to each other. People at companies go talk to each other. People move around, but they're talking. Like, there's people from Apple talking to people from Google all the time. That's happening because they're close to each other, right? Like, you need to go have conversations with people outside your walls. And again, that needs to happen more in this area, the kind of Fox Valley, Green Bay area. That needs to happen in almost all regions, so that collaboration and progress can happen for the industry.
Yeah, I have a ton of passion for that, because I'm sure you see it, being in discovery meetings and learning more. You're like, hey, we got this problem. You're like, yeah, so do they over there. Like, they just fixed it. I'd love to. We're here to help. But we could also go talk to them a little bit and see what their journey was and what it was to, what to expect as you kind of go on this. So many things, as long as companies are honest and didn't give the, Instagram picture sometimes of how things are going, you could definitely, learn from one another. So.
Yeah, it's really hard to be vulnerable, and especially if you haven't talked to many people outside your walls, it's hard to be vulnerable because you haven't done it yet. Yeah. So you have to go out and talk to people, realize that they have the same problems you do. They're probably seeing them almost the exact same way you are. Especially from our seat, we get to see that over and over again. Yep, heard that. And collaborate and find ways to solve each other's problems, be part of each other's shared journeys, things like that.
Well, Josh, I'm super excited to see how Tanduo continues to grow and makes an impact in Wisconsin and nationwide. So I really appreciate you being here and shedding some knowledge on what you guys are doing.
Appreciate it greatly. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. And thank you for listening to IT Unplugged. Please make sure you come on over and listen to our episodes about IT, cybersecurity, digital transformation, all things business. And really hope you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff below. All right. See you next time.